All right, so are you ready to dive into a pretty fascinating document?
Yeah, let's do it.
We've got a curriculum guide here,
Hmm.
and this thing was developed for NATO and Partner for Peace institutions.
Wow.
And the whole mission of it is to build faculty development programs that are top-notch.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You can think of it as like a master class for master instructors, right?
Yeah, like a train the trainer kind of approach, but for really high-level military education, that's pretty cool.
And the goal is to have this kind of ripple effect across all these different institutions of teaching excellence.
Now, this guide, I'm assuming, wasn't just slapped together by one country, right?
No, it was a multinational effort.
That makes sense.
So you can imagine it's got a really interesting mix of insights and best practices from all these different countries.
Oh, absolutely. You can definitely tell that they pulled from a lot of different sources.
And that really comes through in the structure, too.
Okay. How so?
It's broken down into 6 core modules.
6 modules.
I know, it's a lot. And they cover everything from, you know, how adults learn best, to how to leverage emerging technologies in the classroom.
I'm really interested in that one, especially in today's rapidly changing tech landscape.
Me too. But before we get into all the really exciting details of each module,
Yeah.
I want to take a step back and ask you, what do you think the overarching goal is here?
That's a good question.
Like, why put so much effort into developing faculty in the first place?
Well, I think if you look at the guide, it really emphasizes this idea of sustainability.
Okay.
It's not just about giving instructors, a couple of new tricks.
Right.
It's really about equipping them to build programs that are going to continue to grow and evolve on their own, long after that initial training is over.
So it's about really building a culture of continuous learning and development.
Exactly. It's not a one-time workshop and you're done.
Right.
It's really about planting those seeds and letting them grow.
Yeah, it's like that ripple effect, right?
Yes, exactly.
These master instructors are learning for themselves, but they're also going back to their institutions and training others.
That's right. They're spreading the knowledge and building those sustainable programs. That's a powerful vision.
It is. So let's jump into these modules.
Okay, let's do it.
The first one is all about the models and principles of adult learning.
Oh, the fundamentals.
Yeah, and I know you're a bit of an education geek.
I plead guilty.
So what are some of the key takeaways for you from this module?
Well, you know how we always say that teaching adults is different from teaching kids?
Of course.
This module really digs into the why behind that.
Okay.
It talks about things like knowles and dragagy.
Knowles and Dragagy?
Yeah, it's basically this idea that adults are self-directed learners. They come to the table with a ton of experience already.
Right, they're not blank slates.
Exactly, and they're not motivated by just memorizing facts.
They want to know how it applies to their life.
Precisely, they want to see that real-world application.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Adults have jobs and families and all sorts of experiences that shape how they learn.
Right.
So how does the guide suggest that instructors actually tap into that?
Well, they really encourage a shift away from those traditional lecture-heavy approaches.
Okay, so less talking at people.
Yeah, and more active learning techniques.
Give me some examples.
Think discussions, case studies, simulations, things that really get students involved and make them think critically.
I am all for anything that breaks up the monotony of endless PowerPoint slides.
Me too. But it's not just about keeping students entertained.
Right.
Active learning is really important for adult learners because of how our brains actually work.
Okay, I'm listening.
When we're just passively listening, information tends to just go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, I've been there.
But when we're actively involved in the process, we start connecting that new information to what we already know,
Right.
to our experiences, and that makes it way more likely to stick.
So it's like the difference between reading a recipe and actually getting your hands dirty in the kitchen.
Perfect analogy. You got it.
And speaking of hands-on learning, the guide even mentions Bloom's taxonomy.
Oh, yes, Bloom's taxonomy.
That's a framework for understanding those different levels of learning, right?
Exactly, from just basic recall all the way up to creating something brand new.
So it's not just about knowing the facts.
No, it's about being able to actually apply that knowledge in meaningful ways.
I see. And to do that, instructors need to design activities that really challenge students to think critically and solve problems and come up with new solutions.
That's the goal.
This is reminding me of a training session I once went to where we had to build a miniature bridge out of spaghetti and marshmallows.
Now, that sounds like a challenge.
Oh, it was. But it taught me a lot about engineering and teamwork and problem solving.
There you go, active learning in action.
It was a sticky situation, but we figured it out.
Nice one. All right. So
Okay.
moving on to module 2.
Yeah, this one focuses on diverse perspectives.
Okay. Diversity.
And I have a feeling this is going to be super relevant in a NATO context.
Oh, absolutely. You're spot on.
What did you find most interesting about this module?
Well, it really emphasized the importance of considering, different perspectives in the classroom.
Like what kind of different perspectives?
Well, they talked about intercultural perspectives, civilian military perspectives, and gender perspectives.
That makes a lot of sense. You've got people from all these different countries, backgrounds, ways of thinking all coming together.
Exactly. And it's not just about being politically correct.
Right.
It's about fostering a learning environment where everyone feels respected and valued.
And where their unique perspectives can actually contribute to a richer learning experience.
That's the idea. But I think it's also about building understanding and collaboration, right?
Yeah, especially in a military context, where you really need to work together effectively across all those different cultural and national boundaries.
You're absolutely right. It's crucial.
So how does the guide actually suggest that instructors bring those diverse perspectives into their teaching?
They actually offer a whole range of techniques.
Like what?
Well, they talk about incorporating case studies that represent different cultural contexts.
Okay.
They suggest inviting guest speakers who can bring in those unique perspectives.
So real-world examples.
Exactly. And they even encourage instructors to create opportunities for students to share their own experiences and viewpoints.
That's really interesting. So it's not just about presenting one single monolithic perspective.
No, it's about creating that genuine dialogue.
And recognizing that everyone, even the instructor, has biases and blind spots.
Exactly. By being open to different perspectives, we can challenge our own assumptions and learn from each other.
I like that a lot. Okay, so let's move on to Module 3. This one's all about active learning techniques.
Okay, back to active learning.
Yeah, we already touched on it a bit, but I'm curious to learn more about the specific techniques they recommend.
Sure. Well, first, they acknowledge that simply saying do active learning isn't enough.
Right.
Instructors need practical tools and strategies.
They need a toolbox.
Exactly. So they break things down into different levels of interaction.
Okay.
Starting with something as simple as asking better questions during lectures.
Because sometimes a lecture is just the most efficient way to get information across.
You're right, but that doesn't mean it has to be passive.
So how do you make a lecture more active?
Well, the guide encourages instructors to think about how they can break up the lecture with moments of reflection or discussion or even quick activities to get those students thinking and applying what they're learning.
I've seen some instructors use polling apps or even just a show of hands to gauge understanding during a lecture.
Absolutely. It keeps people engaged, and it gives the instructor valuable feedback in real time.
Right, and then you can move on to more interactive techniques like think, pair, share,
Oh, yeah. Think, pair, share is a classic.
where students discuss a concept in pairs and then share their thoughts with the whole group.
It's a great way to get everyone involved, even those who might be hesitant to speak up in front of the whole class.
And it helps them articulate their ideas more clearly.
Definitely. And then there are small group discussions, case studies, role-playing. They provide a whole toolbox.
I remember one training where we did a role-playing exercise about negotiating a hostage situation.
Oh, wow. That sounds intense.
It was,
Yeah.
but it definitely brought the concepts to life in a way that a lecture never could.
See, that's what active learning is all about, making it memorable, making it meaningful, and making it stick.
Okay, I'm ready to move on to Module 4. This one tackles the often dreaded topic of instructional design.
Oh, yes. The art of crafting a good lesson.
And I'm curious, how does this guide make that process less daunting?
Well, they really emphasize something called backwards design.
Backwards design.
I know it sounds a little counterintuitive.
It does kind of like we're about to do a dance move.
Right, but it's actually a really smart approach.
So explain it to me.
Well, it means you start by identifying the learning outcomes.
Okay.
What do you want your students to be able to do with the knowledge?
Not just regurgitate facts.
Exactly. You want them to apply it, and then you work backwards from there.
So you design assessments that actually measure those outcomes.
Yeah. Yes. And then finally, you develop learning activities that will help students achieve those outcomes.
So instead of starting with the content and trying to figure out what to do with it,
Right.
you start with the end goal in mind.
Precisely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And the guide provides, a framework and practical tools like lesson plan templates to help instructors implement this approach.
That's really helpful because I think a lot of instructors get overwhelmed by that blank page syndrome when it comes to lesson planning.
Absolutely. Having a structure and some tools can make it much less scary.
Okay, so on to Module 5, Assessment and Evaluation.
The dynamic duo.
What's the focus here?
Well, this module really emphasizes that assessment isn't just about giving grades.
Okay, so it's more than just a letter or a number.
Right. It's about gathering information to improve the learning process for both the students and the instructors.
So it's about feedback, right?
Yes, giving students meaningful feedback that helps them learn and grow.
And they talk about using a variety of assessment methods.
Exactly, both formative and summative.
Can you break those terms down for me? I think they can be a little confusing.
Sure. Think of formative assessment, like getting coaching during a game.
Okay.
It's ongoing feedback that helps students identify their strengths and weaknesses, make adjustments to their strategies.
Okay, like a halftime pep talk.
Exactly. And then summative assessment is like the final score at the end of the game.
Right. It measures how much they've learned overall.
Exactly. So the guide encourages instructors to use a mix of both to get a complete picture of student learning.
Makes sense. And they also highlight self-assessment and peer assessment.
Yes, getting students involved in the evaluation process.
That's interesting. So it's not just the instructor doing all the evaluating.
Right. Self-assessment helps students reflect on their own learning, identify their strengths and weaknesses, and take ownership of their growth.
I like that.
And then peer assessment allows students to learn from each other and provide constructive feedback.
It's like they're all in this together.
Exactly. And the guide actually provides tools and techniques for doing all of this.
That's great. Like what?
They have templates for creating rubrics, guidelines for conducting observations, even strategies for giving effective feedback.
Because let's be honest, giving good feedback is a skill.
Oh, absolutely. I've gotten feedback that was so vague and unhelpful, it made my eyes glaze over.
We've all been there. Okay, let's wrap up part 1 with Module 6.
Mhm.
This one focuses on using emerging technologies to enhance education.
Bringing education into the digital age.
Exactly. And this is probably the module that's going to need the most updating as technology continues to evolve at warp speed.
You're not wrong, but the core principles, I think they'll remain the same.
Okay, what are those core principles?
It's not about using technology just for the sake of it.
Right, it has to have a purpose.
Exactly. It's about using it strategically to support different learning styles and to achieve specific learning outcomes.
So instead of just slapping a PowerPoint presentation online and calling it a day,
Right.
instructors need to think about how to use technology in ways that truly enhance the learning experience. So what are some of the approaches they discuss?
Well, they talk about blended learning,
Okay.
which combines online and face-to-face instruction.
The best of both worlds.
And then there's flipped classrooms.
Now, that's a concept I've heard a lot about, but I'm not sure I fully understand.
Sure, it's basically where students watch lectures at home.
At home?
Yep, through videos or readings, and then they come to class for more interactive activities.
So it's like the homework becomes pre-work,
Exactly.
when class time is more about application and interaction.
Precisely, and it allows instructors to really tailor their teaching to individual student needs.
Because they can see who's struggling with which concepts.
Exactly, and then they can provide more targeted support.
So technology is used to personalize and make learning more efficient.
Exactly, and it's not just about fancy gadgets either.
Right.
They talk about using simple tools like online discussion forums or shared document platforms to foster collaboration and create a sense of community,
I like that.
even when students are learning remotely.
This has given me a lot to think about in terms of my own teaching.
Me too. It's really thought-provoking.
But we're going to have to wrap up part 1 of our deep dive here.
Already.
I know we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from adult learning to technology, it's been a whirlwind.
But there's still so much more to explore.
I'm ready for more.
Well, stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to dig deeper into the practical challenges and rewards of actually implementing this ambitious curriculum guide.
Can't wait. As we were talking about all these innovative approaches in the last part, I started thinking about, the challenges of actually implementing this kind of program.
Yeah.
It's one thing to have a great guide, but it's another thing to actually make it a reality.
Right. Like, how do you get people on board with all these changes?
Exactly. I imagine there's got to be some resistance.
Oh, I'm sure instructors are probably thinking, I've been teaching this way for years. Why do I need to change?
Right. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. So I think one of the biggest challenges is going to be getting buy-in from the instructors themselves.
You're absolutely right. And it's understandable. Change can be uncomfortable.
Especially when it comes to something as personal as teaching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you create that sense of ownership and get instructors excited about these new approaches?
It's like you said before, this guide is about empowering instructors, not dictating to them.
Yeah, it's about giving them the tools and the support they need to succeed.
So how do you actually do that?
Well, I think it starts with leadership.
Okay.
If the leaders in the institution make it clear that faculty development is a top priority,
Yeah.
and that they're willing to invest the resources and the support to make it happen,
Right.
that sends a powerful message.
Just about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And it's not just about providing resources.
Yeah.
It's about creating a culture where professional development is actually valued.
Where it's rewarded.
Exactly. Imagine a promotion process where teaching excellence and a commitment to ongoing learning are actually key factors.
Yeah, that would definitely send a strong signal.
Right.
But even with strong leadership support, I imagine there might be some instructors who are still hesitant.
Oh, absolutely. Especially those who've been teaching the same way for a long time.
So how do you overcome that inertia?
I think it's important to acknowledge that change is hard
Yeah.
and to create a supportive environment where instructors feel safe to experiment and, even make mistakes.
Like, think back to when you were learning to ride a bike.
Okay.
Did you just hop on and take off perfectly?
Oh, no, definitely not.
There were probably a few wobbles and maybe even a scraped knee or two.
Yeah, probably more than a few.
But that's how you learn, right?
Right, by trying and failing and trying again.
But you need someone there to encourage you and maybe offer a few tips along the way.
Exactly. And that's where things like peer observation and mentoring can be so valuable. Imagine having a trusted colleague observe your class and give you some feedback, or being able to reach out to a more experienced instructor for guidance.
It takes the pressure off feeling like you have to be perfect right away.
Exactly. And it can also help to highlight the benefits of these new approaches.
The benefits.
Yeah, not just for the students, but for the instructors themselves.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
So how does all of this actually benefit the instructors?
Well, for one thing, active learning techniques can make teaching more engaging
Okay.
and more rewarding. Let's be honest. Lecturing at a sea of faces for hours on end can get pretty boring.
Yeah, even for the most passionate instructors.
Right, but when students are more engaged, they're more likely to learn.
And that's got to be motivating for the instructors.
It is. It's a win-win.
And what about technology?
Technology.
Yeah, I imagine that can be a bit of a double-edged sword.
It can be.
It's a powerful tool, but it can also be overwhelming and time-consuming.
Right. You have to use it thoughtfully.
This isn't about replacing instructors with robots.
No, it's about empowering them.
Okay, so can you give me an example of how technology can actually make an instructor's life easier?
Sure, think about online learning platforms.
Oh.
They can streamline tasks like grading and communication,
Right.
which frees up more time for instructors to actually focus on teaching.
And interacting with students.
Exactly, and a lot of those platforms have built-in analytics.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
They can give you valuable insights into student progress.
So you can see who's struggling and where they need help.
Exactly, so it's not just about using technology to deliver content.
Right.
It's about using it to understand your students better.
And personalize the learning experience.
Exactly. And technology can also help create more engaging learning experiences.
Like what?
Think about virtual reality simulations, interactive games, even just using multimedia to present information in a more dynamic way.
I've seen some really amazing examples of virtual reality being used for training in military contexts.
Oh.
It allows soldiers to experience realistic scenarios and practice their skills in a safe environment.
That's right. And it's not just for military applications either.
Right.
Imagine using virtual reality to take students on a virtual field trip to ancient Rome or to explore the human body.
The possibilities are endless.
They are. So we've talked a lot about the challenges and the benefits.
We have.
But I'm curious, are there any institutions that are actually putting these principles into practice?
Oh, that's a great question. Are you seeing any trends out there?
Well, one trend that I'm really excited about is the use of micro-credentials in faculty development.
Micro-credentials.
Yeah, these are short, focused courses that allow instructors to develop specific skills or knowledge.
Okay, like in active learning or online teaching.
Exactly, and because they're short and focused, they're more manageable for busy instructors.
Right, who might not have the time for a full-blown degree program.
Exactly, it's about making professional development accessible.
And relevant to their needs.
Right, and these micro-credentials can often be stacked.
Step.
Yeah, to create a more comprehensive learning pathway.
So an instructor could start with one on active learning and then move on to one on online teaching.
Right, and eventually they can build a whole portfolio of specialized skills.
It's like earning badges in a video game.
Exactly, but with real-world implications.
Right, and it's a great way to motivate instructors.
And to recognize their achievements.
Absolutely. Another trend we touched on earlier is the use of learning communities.
Learning communities.
Yeah, to support faculty development.
Right. Those are great.
Can you give me an example of how that might work in practice?
Sure. Imagine a group of instructors from different departments
Okay.
who are all interested in incorporating more active learning.
Right.
They could form a learning community where they meet regularly to share ideas, observe each other's classes, and provide feedback and support.
It's like having a built-in support system.
Exactly. It takes the pressure off.
And it helps you step outside your comfort zone.
And it can also help break down silos between departments.
Because you've got people from different disciplines all learning from each other.
Right. It's about fostering a culture of collaboration.
Not just competition.
Exactly. And these learning communities can take many forms. They can be formal with structured meetings and a curriculum, or they can be more informal, connecting online or through social media.
So there's flexibility to find what works best.
Right. It's all about finding the right fit.
I love how this guide empowers institutions to make the program their own.
Yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. It's a set of ingredients and tools that you can use to create something really unique.
And it speaks to the collaborative spirit of the guide.
Right.
It was developed by a multinational team, and it encourages institutions to adapt it to their own context.
It's all about sharing best practices and working together to improve teaching excellence.
Exactly. It's like they're saying, here's a framework, now go forth and create something amazing.
I love this. So we've explored the challenges, the benefits, some real-world examples.
We have covered a lot of ground.
But I imagine that actually implementing these changes on a large scale can still be daunting.
It can be, but I think it's important to start small.
Okay.
Focus on achievable goals. You don't have to do everything at once.
Pick one or two things and build from there.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right. And you have to be patient and persistent.
Absolutely. Change takes time.
But I'm curious, what are some of the benefits that institutions can expect to see?
Benefits.
Yeah, if they invest in faculty development.
Well, when it's done well, it can lead to all sorts of positive outcomes.
Okay, like what?
Improved student learning, higher retention rates, better graduation rates, even increased alumni satisfaction.
Wow, so it's not just about warm and fuzzy feelings.
No, it's about real results.
And it's not just about student outcomes either.
Right.
Faculty development can also lead to increased faculty satisfaction and retention.
That's right, because they feel valued and supported.
And empowered to be the best they can be.
Exactly, and when you have a talented and dedicated faculty that enhances the reputation of the institution,
which makes it more attractive to prospective students and faculty.
there's a virtuous cycle.
It is invest in faculty development and everyone benefits.
That's the idea, but before we wrap up this part, I have one final thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Faculty development is not a destination.
Okay.
It's a journey.
A journey.
It's an ongoing process of growth, reflection, and improvement.
It's about embracing a growth mindset, being open to new ideas.
Exactly. And this NATO curriculum guide is a fantastic roadmap for that journey.
It gives you the tools and resources you need.
And institutions can adapt it to their own needs.
All right, so we've explored the challenges, the benefits, real-world examples.
We've covered it all.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle.
One more piece.
Those appendices.
Yes, the appendices. We haven't even touched those yet.
That's right. We'll be back in part 3 to unpack those and see how they can help institutions tailor this guide to their specific needs. So stay tuned for the grand finale. All right, welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into this awesome faculty development guide.
I'm ready.
We've covered a lot, those core modules.
Yeah.
We've talked about the challenges and the rewards of implementing it. We even saw some real-world examples.
Yeah, it's been great.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle.
Appendices.
Yes, those mysterious appendices.
They're like the hidden treasure.
So let's crack them open. Appendix is like a gold mine of additional faculty development programs.
Oh, wow.
Some of them are foundational,
Like for new instructors.
Yeah, exactly, like a baseline. And then others offer more advanced training, really diving deep into specific topics or approaches.
So there's something for everyone.
There is. It's like they've created this whole ecosystem of learning and development.
Yeah.
Recognizing that instructors need support throughout their careers.
Not just at the beginning.
Not just one and done.
Right, continuous learning.
Exactly. And they even include information on how to assess the effectiveness of these programs.
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, how do you know if it's actually working?
Right, you got to measure the impact.
Data-driven decision-making.
Exactly, even in education.
So Appendix I is all about expanding those horizons, right?
Yeah, giving you more options.
A whole smorgasbord.
Love it. What about Appendix 2?
Okay, Appendix 2 is like a choose-your-own-adventure guide.
Ooh,
for designing faculty development programs.
okay.
They recognize that, not all institutions are the same.
Right.
Different needs, different resources.
Uh-huh.
So they offer a bunch of formats to choose from.
So it's not one size fits all.
It's not you find the right fit for your institution.
Okay.
They outline options for traditional courses,
Yeah.
intensive workshops, feedback programs, personalized consultations,
Wow, a lot of variety.
even things like newsletters and resource libraries.
So no matter what your size or your resources, you can find something that works.
They even give you guidance on how to choose the right format
Oh, that's helpful.
based on your goals,
Yeah.
your target audience, your resources.
Like a roadmap.
It is, I love how this guide really empowers institutions to take ownership
Yeah.
and make those programs their own.
It's not just follow the recipe.
No, it's like, here are the ingredients.
Create something delicious.
Create something unique and amazing.
And it really speaks to that collaborative spirit, right?
Yeah.
It was developed by a multinational team.
Huh?
It encourages institutions to adapt it.
Make it your own.
It's all about sharing best practices and working together to elevate teaching.
It really is. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive.
Already.
I know it flew by.
It did.
I feel so inspired.
Me too. It's like we've seen a glimpse into the future of education.
Where teaching is valued, instructors are empowered, students have the skills they need to thrive.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is. And I think ultimately the success of any of this comes down to the individual instructors.
Absolutely. Their willingness to embrace new ideas to grow.
Being lifelong learners.
Exactly. So embrace the challenge, seek out opportunities, connect with your colleagues, and never stop learning.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Fun.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into faculty development.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something and are feeling inspired to make a difference.
Go out and make education amazing.
And that's a wrap.